When I was newly sober, I was tormented by a question I used to ask myself. Will I ever be able to enjoy a game again? This past week, I watched deliriously happy fans celebrate championships in New York City and in Carolina. I watched World Cup supporters lose themselves completely in the joy of their country's victories. And as I watched all of it, the screaming, embracing, the dancing in the streets, I couldn't stop noticing the single thread woven through every single scene. Alcohol. Every time, without exception. I know that scene intimately. I was once that guy, climbing the street lamps, hanging upside down, singing until my throat gave out when my team won the national championship. And I never once stopped to ask myself why. Alcohol and celebration have been linked in Western culture for as long as Western culture has existed. But the consistency and sheer intensity of drinking at sporting events is something different, something worth examining. It practically begs the question, why are these two things so inexorably linked? Welcome back to Second Act Recovery. I'm Dr. Donald Crow. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the powerful, mostly invisible role that alcohol actually plays in the way we celebrate, and why understanding that role may be one of the most important steps you can take towards staying sober and helping you live your most fulfilling second act. Of course, when I was actively drinking, I never bothered myself with the question why I was drinking for even a moment. Being loaded to celebrate my team's win was simply automatic. Getting loaded to rationalize my team's losses was just as automatic. It was the factory default setting for my entire life as a sports fan. So when I finally quit drinking 28 years ago, about a third of the way through my 40-year medical practice, I found myself missing it deeply. I felt genuine grief when I couldn't simply give myself over to my old ways once the game began. And that grief surprised me. But here's something I learned early in recovery. Regret is a deeply corrosive force. And in my opinion, the worst thing you can do with it is to ignore it, or simply try to muscle through it. The far better path, and I say this both as a physician and as someone who has walked this path, is to analyze it, to follow it back to its source. To do this, I began a systematic approach. It started the moment I noticed that some part of me desperately wanted a drink. Instead of merely pushing back, I took what felt like, at first, a completely unnatural step. I stopped and I asked myself, what do I actually want here? Because I drank for a reason. I drank because I believed it gave me something I needed, or at least something I wanted. And until I understood what that something was, I could not move beyond simply fighting urges one at a time. Even when I scored a tactical victory against a craving, the larger war still raged on. True peace remained elusive. I began thinking about this recently as I watched a group of Scottish football fans preparing to cheer their team on in the World Cup. Every one of them had a frosty pint in hand, and clearly not the first of the evening. And I asked myself the question I had never once thought to ask when I was one of them. What was alcohol actually doing for them? The obvious answer is that it enhanced the experience. But how? That is precisely what I had never explored. Here's the first thing to understand. Taking a drink has a highly predictable effect. It floods the brain with chemistry that alters your perceptions and literally hijacks the neural pathways connecting one thought to another. This is not illusion. This is hard biology. It happens to every person who introduces ethyl alcohol into their blood. Measurable, consistent, and inevitable. And that chemical release begins even before the first drink is consumed. Anticipation alone is enough to open the brain's floodgates. That is how powerful this chemical is. But here's the effect that I believe matters most for sports fans. Alcohol profoundly magnifies the importance of whatever situation you are in. Step back and think about that for a moment. Our society invests enormous emotional energy in sporting events, man-made contests, whose outcome fundamentally changes nothing except the mood of those who have invested themselves in it. A chemical that makes the seemingly meaningless feel monumentally important is, for sports fans, extraordinarily useful. And when everyone around you is drinking, something else happens. They are immersed in the exact same delusion. Seeing them react with the same intensity gives proof of concept to your own experience. It validates the entirely absurd idea that your fate, perhaps the fate of humanity itself, rests on the outcome of this game. Then comes the third effect, the erosion of inhibition. After just a few drinks, you begin to say and do things your sober self simply would not. And this, I have come to believe, is the key dividing line between those who can drink without it consuming their lives and those who cannot. But regardless of which side of that line you stand on, one thing is true for everyone who drinks. Inhibitions fall. And in that moment, surrounded by people wearing the same team jersey, the result feels like liberation, like finally revealing your true self and being embraced for it. The vast majority of fans never examine any of this. They are simply enjoying themselves. The fact that it is all a chemical illusion is completely invisible to them. It was invisible to me, too, until I had been sober long enough to finally see it clearly. I've been a college sports fan for my entire life. My alma mater won the national title game during my senior year, one of the genuine joys of my life. Those memories are vivid, and when I examine them honestly, they involved outrageously foolish behavior. I have no regrets about a single one of them. This year, that same alma mater won another national championship, and I have nothing but good memories of that event as well. But those memories were made completely sober. And what strikes me, what I believe is the most important thing that I can share with you, is that the quality of those memories is identical, which tells me it was never the alcohol that made those moments meaningful. It was the event itself. It took me a long time to learn that I did not need to chemically manufacture the importance of a moment for that moment to have genuine meaning. At first, sitting in the stand sober while everyone around me drank was genuinely difficult. But then, during a ball game, I watched those same people pass out by the seventh inning and miss the 3-run shot that tied the game. And I realized something. My sobriety was not costing me the experience. It was giving it back to me, in full, without distortion. I began to realize that what made me different from my drinking friends around me was not a moral failing, it was simply brain chemistry. Specifically, it was my brain's failure to adequately inhibit that next drink. That is a medical condition to be managed, not a character flaw to be ashamed of. The moment I accepted that, everything changed. Look, if alcohol is not creating problems in your life, you may not need to think deeply about any of this. But if alcohol is quietly, or not so quietly, sabotaging your life, then understanding why you take that first drink becomes your most powerful defense against taking the next one. I used to believe that I needed to drink to be a real fan. That wildness and abandon were what it meant to truly belong. Now I know the games go on, whether I drink or not. And when I watch them sober, only one thing genuinely changes. My memories are based on reality and not a chemical fantasy. If you're ready to get serious about sobriety, reaching the 3-month mark is often considered a critical milestone, and the first 90 days are where most people stumble. I've created a 90-day sobriety survival kit specifically designed to help you reframe your relationship with alcohol and navigate those first difficult weeks with concrete, actionable strategies. I've left a link in the description below. Also, to help the channel grow, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your own experience in the comments below. And while you're here, why not check out this next video where I discuss 10 lies that kept me drinking for an extra 10 years. I'm Dr. Donald Crow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.